Hello, 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 and welcome to the live. I'm hoping to get a couple of these in before the game. Hope y'all are having a great Sunday. Welcome to the channel. If you are not a subscriber already, please hit the subscribe button. Would appreciate your support. Thumbs up the video, drop a comment, even if it's just to say hello. That would be nice. I thought I'd jump on, and I'm hoping to do a couple of stories today, but I could tell you right now, everything ends at 8 o'clock because I will be watching the Pacers and OKC play. I am pulling for OKC. This is a game 7. So we'll see what's up. I just got through watching Indiana Fever against the Las Vegas Aces, and Las Vegas won. Thank goodness. Asia, she was having a little bit rough in the first half, but Asia Wilson is Asia Wilson. So the rest of her team pulled through. They did what they needed to do today. Still need to see more out of the Aces, but that's not what this video is about. So I've got to do that though. I've got to make sure that I get a couple of these videos in. I'm trying to anyway before the game at 8 o'clock tonight. And then y'all, I am ready to start intermittent fasting again. And I've done that off and on, and it's been very successful for me always. So I'm trying to think about what I might need to make sure I have in the house so that I can kick that off tomorrow. But anyway, having said all of that, y'all, it's another case where we have a rapper who is of course we all know Fat Joe, who is being accused at the moment of a civil RICO, and it is a conflict that has been going on back and forth between him and his hype man for some time. His hype man had made some allegations against him a while ago. Joe filed, I believe, a lawsuit against him as far as like defamation and other things associated with the things he said. Now that same person has also filed this civil suit. Of course, Joe says it's retaliation or him just trying to get back at him because of his suit against him. Joe is being represented by the lawyer who also represented ASAP Rocky. This lawyer also represented Trump during some of his charges. So there's another one. And from what I've seen so far, and we're going to get into it, we're going to look at the story and just see what's there. But with these cases, it's kind of like for some of them, it's a wait and see. Even with the Tyler Perry case, when those text messages first came out and I read them, I was like, okay, you must have something more than this because this right here is a bunch of nothing. So I went and read the whole filing, which was like, I think 46 pages. And I left that filing feeling like how I felt about those text messages. Quite frankly, I felt more like, okay, it's nothing here. Because what they did in that filing was they took, for a lot of it, they took those text messages and they just created a narrative around the text messages that were kind of adding a lot to what was not in the text messages. So at this point, and this all this stuff is, we kind of take what we have, what information we have, we process it as we get it. But I could tell you, my first take with the Tyler Perry situation, I don't believe it. I don't believe it based off of what I read in the filing, what I've seen in the text messages. Yeah, you're gonna need more for that $260 million lawsuit. With the Fat Joe case, from what I've seen so far, I don't know what to believe. I do think it's kind of interesting that some of the things that are being said as far as activities and behaviors sounds really close to what Diddy was accused of, especially with some of the freak off activity and that type of thing. Fat Joe is being accused of like being in relationships with underage girls. I know when Diddy's cases first started being supported by so many different lawsuits. There were allegedly going to be cases that were going to be brought forward that also included minors. I can tell you, I'm following Diddy's trial every day, and there has been not one mention of a minor in any of the information that's been presented in his trial yet. So, and then another similarity I would say with Fat Joe's case, even though at this point it's just one employee, but it is an employee who is saying, I was subjected to, these activities, like either I had to partake in like these activities or I was working all these hours. So just more of that. I have a lot of thoughts on some of this stuff, but I'll try to take it on a case by case basis. So, one thing I think is very different too, or it appears to be right now, between Fat Joe's case and the case against Diddy. Well, of course, the major thing that's different is that Diddy's case is a criminal RICO and Fat Joe's case is a civil RICO. So, that's the major difference at this point. But one of the other things that is kind of interesting is that more people, right now, you've had Ja Rule who's come out and said, "Hey, Joe is doing good." 50 Cent has come out and just like, I don't believe these charges against him. So the community, that his peer group, seems to be willing to say out loud, we kind of support Joe. Nobody's doing that for Diddy, and I don't know if that's in part because that tape of the beating at the hotel was so what it was. It probably put them in a position where they cannot say a thing. Now, whether or not, if that tape wasn't involved, would we even be here with Diddy in this case? I honestly don't think we would be. I don't think there would be a case with Diddy if it were not for that tape. But nevertheless, those are some of the big differences between the two and also some of the similarities. So what I thought we'd do today is kind of just get into like what some of the celebrities are saying around the Fat Joe case, and then get into an article that gets into a little bit more. I do not plan on reading 150 plus pages for Fat Joe's case. I can't bring myself to do it. I might change my mind later, but right now I'm like, we're going to see what happens with this. If it moves along, if it becomes something a little bit more significant, definitely if it advances to a criminal case, then I'll definitely read that. But right now, I can't bring myself to do it. So let's just check out. We're going to check out what Ja Rule had to say. And then we'll go into looking at what 50 Cent said. Check out an article that gets into a bit more detail about what's being alleged against Fat Joe, and then we'll be out. And then maybe I'll get to do another video before the game comes on tonight. So let's jump in and check out this video from Ja Rule.
Two quick questions. First of all, doing the tribute. Oh my God, how was that? And I see that you have a shirt saying "Rest in Peace." We're gonna go ahead and get that. Take us through the emotions. What were you thinking on the stage?
It's heavy, you know. I, I've gotten through the heavier parts of
I'm assuming he's talking about Irv.
it because I've been doing it. So it doesn't hit me as hard as it used to. But I go in and out of my moments with with dealing with my brother's passing. But at the moment, I'm good right now. Yeah.
Last, and I'm not being funny, but I want to know, how is Joe? Have you spoken to Fat Joe?
Crack?
How is he? That's what you're saying. That's
Good.
it.
I actually spoke to Crack yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was asking, is he still not available for tonight? Because he had a show. But yeah, he's good. He's in good spirits. It's fine.
So there's that. And then we also had, let's see, I think in this same article, 50 Cent. 50 Cent, many men wish death upon me. Fat Joe ain't one of them. Because this person who filed this lawsuit, this civil RICO against Fat Joe, he has an accusation in that document saying that 50 Cent was that Fat Joe was trying to kill Fat Joe. And he had put a bag on his head. So that's in the lawsuit. 50 doesn't seem to believe that. He put, anytime you see 50 not trolling, you just like, okay, you must just really like this dude, because when does 50 Cent not troll? But nevertheless, he has come out and said that he doesn't believe it. Here's his further commentary. He said, "These baseless accusations and claims are not credible. I'm sorry Joe has to endure the public scrutiny and damage to his reputation. This is a stick up. I wrote this hook. I should have kept this one." And that's 50 Cent. So, and there are others too who are like supporting Fat Joe at this point, which is very different again from the Diddy trial. You did not see any entertainers. I mean, you saw here of late, you saw Kanye show up to court. And I think I saw something from Cuba Gooding Jr., who looked like he was cracked out completely. I'm like, oh boy, you just really a disappointment. But he just wished them well, and then he made some talking about Diddy. He made some commentary about reality TV has messed up uh, stars being able to do things. What are you talking about, Cuba? So that was that. But so that again, even with just those two, that is a big difference from how people are willing, especially peers, are willing to come out and support Diddy. And like I said, Diddy's case is a bit hard because how do you come out and support somebody who has a video of him like beating and kicking a woman? I mean, you really can't come out and support that. So now let's just take a quick look at the article that's in Variety that goes into a little bit more detail about the case, and we'll just get into those details. And we're going to follow this case closely just to see where it goes from here. Uh, and see if it lands anywhere. It may advance to a criminal case, but right now it is just a civil RICO case. So Fat Joe sued for $20 million by former hype man in explosive complaint. Alleges that the rapper engaged in sex acts with minors and coerced him into more than 4,000 sexual acts to maintain his standing. Now I'm telling you right now, I'm already looking side eye at this man. You telling us that Fat Joe coerced, forced you into 4,000 sexual acts in order for you to maintain your standing. Couple of challenges I have with this. One, if it's true, why? You a man, why would you subject yourself to that? Trying to understand. Secondly, this sounds like one of those situations where you were down with a whole lot of effery, a whole lot of effery until you felt burnt by it. I think in his case, he's saying he didn't get paid, but he should have gotten paid and all of this. So that always makes me look at your side eye too. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily lying, but it's hard. It's really hard to rush to someone's side to say, you know what? I was a man working for this man, and this man forced me into more than 4,000 sexual acts, and I had to do it because if I didn't do it, I would have lost my job. See, that's the problem for me. You didn't have other options. You couldn't have got another work. What, you stayed there for the 4,000 acts and you really didn't have a problem with it until you felt like he screwed you over by not paying you whatever you said that you deserved to get paid. That's when you had a problem with it. Okay. Okay. Okay, the lawsuit comes after the rapper sued T.A. Dixon in April for slandering him on social media by claiming Fat Joe flew a 16-year-old girl across state lines for sex. Fat Joe's former hype man Terrence T.A. Dixon has filed an explosive lawsuit in federal court against the rapper on Thursday. Dixon is alleging that his former boss, whose real name is Joseph Antonio, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, engaged in coercive labor exploitation, financial fraud, sexual manipulation, violent intimidation, and psychological coercion. All of that wording sounds very, very similar to what's in the Diddy case. Dixon adds that the hip hop star behind such chart toppers as What's Love got rich and famous while he and his associates deliberately suppressed, silenced and erased Dixon's substantial creative, artistic, and commercial contributions, which were foundational to Fat Joe's professional success and personal brand. He is seeking up to $12 million in damages. So, if Dixon's case is really about I contributed to the music. Maybe I wrote something. Maybe I created beats. Maybe I gave ideas or whatever. And I got screwed in that. Then say that. Then say that. But if you're going to say that that's why you're filing a $20 million lawsuit, and since you don't feel like you're ever going to get your money out of Fat Joe that you feel like you were due because of your creative contributions to creating him, then now you say, well, let me tell you what else he did. Y'all know he was with underage girls. Y'all know for all these years I watched him do this and do that. Well, it wasn't an issue for you, and it wouldn't. It seems like it wouldn't have been an issue for you if you would have gotten paid whatever you felt like you should have been paid, and maybe you were screwed. I'm just saying it's a bit of a moral situation here when some of these people only want to expose stuff that allegedly happened once they don't get what they wanted to get out of the situation. So it's like you didn't have an issue with seeing him allegedly engaging in sexual acts with underage girls until you didn't get paid. So that's just the issue I have with some of these people and how they come out and when they come out. But let's continue. The complaint filed in U.S. District Court, Southern District of New York, details so many disturbing claims about Fat Joe's alleged sexual relations with women, including minors, that it contains a trigger warning on the first page of the 157-page document. For 16 years, Dixon served as Fat Joe's so called hype man, a common figure in hip hop who supports the artist by energizing the crowd. Of course, we all know what a hype man is, and enhancing their overall performance. He also contributed as a lyricist and background vocalist on such hits as Congratulations, Ice Cream, and Money Over Bees. According to the complaint, he had an unrivaled vantage point to observe the rapper's offstage lifestyle and behavior. Dixon is represented by Tyrone Blackburn. This is an issue. Tyrone Blackburn, you can put him with Busby. When you hear that name come up as representing some of these people who are making these accusations, it's almost like it automatically loses credibility. Now, whether this case has something or has some legs or is going to go anywhere, all of that remains to be seen. But I do know as soon as you connect somebody like Tyrone Blackburn or Busby to your case, a lot of us are already like, okay, ambulance chaser type lawyers, like, okay, what is this going to be another one of those cases that gets thrown out? Dixon is represented by Tyrone Blackburn, who is also the lead counsel in a high profile case against Sean Diddy Combs. In February 2024, Blackburn filed a lawsuit on behalf of Diddy accuser Lil Rodney, alleging sexual assault, sexual harassment, and failure to pay his underling. Also, that reminds me, isn't it interesting that the government chose not to call Lil Rodney for their case at all, where he claimed he got shot at Diddy's house? So it just makes me feel like this is another one of Blackburn's cases that's ultimately going to get thrown out. 1 month later, the Department of Homeland Security agents conducted raids at Combs' mansion in Los Angeles and Miami. Dixon states in the complaint that Fat Joe forced him into humiliating situations, including sex acts performed under duress and surveillance, accompanied by threats of abandonment in foreign countries if he refused compliance. By his own estimation, Dixon states in the suit that he was coerced into more than 4,000 sexual acts to maintain his standing within the enterprise. Now, I ask anybody, just, I know it might be some yeses out there, but could your boss force you into more than 4,000 sexual acts in order for you to maintain your position at your job? I'm saying, where you stand on that? Where you stand on that? And if a person was forced into that in order to maintain whatever their quote unquote standing was with the job, how do you process that now with this accusation? Like I said, if that actually happened, is that wrong? Of course it's wrong. If that actually happened, of course it's wrong. But I'm still going to look at that person and say, what accountability did you have in that situation? Because how do you let somebody coerce you into over more than 4,000 sexual acts just so you can maintain your position at the job? Mm. Most shockingly, the suit claims that Dixon personally witnessed Fat Joe engage in sexual relations with children who were 15 and 16 years old and lists three such Jane Does. Now, this is the part of the allegation to me, especially with him getting very specific with who these girls are. We should be able to, meaning the country, the government, whoever's on the other side, should be able to prove this. If this is true, okay, and if these people who are now perhaps legal adults, I'm assuming they're legal adults now, testify, or their text messages or something else like showing something to back up what he's saying here, this might give this case some legs. Okay. Let's see, go back up here. Dixon personally witnessed Fat Joe engage in sexual relations with children who were 15 and 16 years old and lists three such Jane Does, including a 16-year-old Dominican girl in New York who, in exchange for cash, clothing, and payment of her cell phone bill, would perform oral sex and other sexual acts on the rapper. Minor Jane Doe 2 is a Caucasian female and not a United States citizen. Fat Joe began having sexual relationships with Minor Doe 2 when she was 15 years old after a concert overseas. Defendant flew Minor Doe 2 to New York City and Miami, Florida on multiple occasions. Due to Minor Doe 2's body being adolescent and not fully formed, defendant paid for her to get a Brazilian butt lift. Minor Doe 2 eventually left defendant and is now married to a professional athlete, the complaint says. Minor Doe 3 is a Latina female who met the defendant when she was 15 years old, turning 16. Now, those are some very specific details, I must say, from Dixon. So I think that might be a problem for Fat Joe, because if that can be verified and these women can be talked to, and also there's probably other documentation to back up some of what Dixon just said, that's going to be a problem for Fat Joe, for sure. According to Dixon, defendant was in love with Minor Doe 3. He even contemplated leaving his wife. The defendant paid all Minor Doe 3's bills and even took her overseas to his tour stops. He brought her to Florida and would put her up in a condo he rented a few blocks from his house with his wife. The lawsuit states. In a recorded conversation, Minor Doe 3 and her 15-year-old cousin describe in detail to plaintiff how inappropriate it was for the defendant, who was in his late 30s at the time, to be fawning over children. Let's see what that recording says. Fat Joe is represented by celebrity criminal attorney Joe Tacopino, who has defended everyone from ASAP Rocky and Donald Trump in high-profile cases. Tacopino responded to the lawsuit, saying in a statement to Variety, the lawsuit filed by Tyrone Blackburn and Terrence Dixon is a blatant act of retaliation, a desperate attempt to deflect attention from the civil suit we filed first, which exposed their coordinated scheme to extort Fat Joe through lies, threats, and manufactured allegations. Law enforcement is aware of the extortionate demand at the heart of this scheme. The allegations against Fat Joe are complete fabrications, lies intended to damage his reputation and force a settlement through public pressure. Fat Joe will not be intimidated. We have taken legal action to expose this fraudulent campaign and hold everyone involved accountable, the statement continued. Defendants in the suit also include Pistol Pete Torres and Richard Rich Player Jos, Jasprito? Okay. Who the complaint refers to as key associates and Fat Joe's criminal enterprise, asserting civil claims for violations of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act and the Racketeer Influence and Corruption Organization Act, also known as Civil RICO, as well as related violations under New York and Florida law, including unjust enrichment, quantum merit, fraudulent concealment, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and money laundering. The suit, oh, the suit additionally names Jay Z's Rock Nation, claiming that the company, which represents Fat Joe, knowingly participated in concealing, transferring, and manipulating Dixon's authorship rights and royalty interests and sought to intimidate, harass, and obstruct the hype man's legitimate claims against Fat Joe, Torres, and I don't know how to say that, just Peter. I don't know. According to the lawsuit, the defendants engaged in deliberate tax fraud scheme. So this man is going all the way in. This man, at the top of this lawsuit, from what's in this Variety article, it appears that he's disgruntled because he's saying that he didn't get paid what he should have gotten paid for what he contributed creatively to Fat Joe. Whether it's music, image, whatever it is, he felt like he's been screwed out of some money. And since he feels as if he's been burnt by that money, he's willing to burn this whole house down. And normally, when somebody does that, they could be telling the truth or they could be lying. But it's Mad Day, and he's getting ready to share everything he knows. So, the earlier part of this article, where he got into the very specific 3 Jane Does and gave very specific details, I think that is going to be easy to verify. If that's true, if those 3 incidents he named with Jane Doe 1, 2, and 3, he gave the type of detail that should be easy to verify. If that's verified, that's going to be a problem for Fat Joe. That's going to be a problem for Fat Joe. So now he's getting into like tax fraud and other things he might know. I mean, he's been around Fat Joe, I think he said like 16 years. So he probably knows where all the bodies are buried. And my only issue with that, okay, because hey, if you've done the dirt, if you've done the things he said, especially with underage girls, if you get exposed, you go down, you go down. The only issue I have with Dixon, you didn't have a problem with it though. Okay. This has nothing to do with if Fat Joe did this, should he have to pay the cost? Yes. This is a separate thing. Dixon, the one who's bringing these allegations, you rode with it. You didn't have any issue with any of the stuff you're talking about now against Fat Joe until you say he didn't give you your money. And once he didn't give you your money, which you might legitimately be due, but once you said he didn't give you your money, y'all, you like, okay, hold on, then I'll handle this way. And so now you're telling us about the 3 Jane Does who were all underage. You're giving us very specific details about these 3 Jane Does. One, he paid for to have a BBL. She's actually married to a professional athlete right now. One is a Caucasian person who came from overseas, who he met at a concert. He pays all of her bills. One who is Latina, who he actually bought her a home close to where he stayed with his wife. All of these details are verifiable. They are verifiable. And so this might very well be a problem for Joe. But all I say to Dixon is you might end up even getting some of your money out of this, maybe. But just from a moral perspective, you're still trash, because that means you really didn't have any issue with what you were seeing until you felt like you were screwed on your money. So when you put in a complaint like this, well, he also forced me to participate in more than 4,000 sexual acts against my will, that I'm not buying. I'm just not buying that. This man forced you, another man, into doing further. I'm not buying that. I believe you're mad about not getting paid your money, and you may be due this money. You know some shit, and now you're telling the shit. If you're telling us the shit about him being with underage people, tell it. He deserves to get whatever he gets for that. But again, you didn't have an issue with it morally until you felt screwed over. Okay. So, according to the lawsuit, the defendants engaged in deliberate tax fraud schemes in an effort to conceal their extensive wage theft, artificially inflate Dixon's tax liabilities, expose him to unwarranted tax audits and penalties, and systematically obscure the exploited labor. The complaint cites a whistleblower accountant who came forward last year, as well as recorded phone calls that helped paint the picture of alleged misdeeds. The move comes after Fat Joe sued Dixon in April for slandering him on social media by claiming that the Bronx born rapper, who enjoys high level political connections, flew a 16-year-old girl across state lines for sex. That suit also named Dixon's lawyer Tyrone Blackburn, claiming the pair tried to shake him down for a settlement. This is the right way to fight Joe through the system. You can't fight him no other way, Dixon tells Variety in an exclusive interview. Joe think he's a god. Joe thinks he's untouchable. Dixon's suit against Fat Joe goes much further than his social media posts and states that he endured a wide spectrum of sexual coercion, psychological control, forced surveillance based humiliation, including being compelled to perform sex acts under observation. Now, who that sound like? These entertainers are into some freaky. I mean, okay. Being filmed or directed by Fat Joe in the presence of others. Tactics designed to control plaintiff's body, erode his autonomy, and ensure silence. It adds these sex based abuses were not private, incidental, or isolated. They were integral to the enterprise's culture of dominance and humiliation, enforced by defendants' associates such as Pistol Pete, JB, and others, and sustained across numerous tour locations, including Miami, North Carolina, Germany, Spain, and Wisconsin. In Thursday's complaint, Dixon claims that the activity took place on Market America's corporate yacht and at its mansion properties, where Fat Joe orchestrated repeated orgies involving plaintiff, female dancers, and minors. Defendant used the lawsuit as that Fat Joe used his status as a hip hop star to compel Dixon and others into degrading sexual performances, often while Fat Joe watched, recorded, or directed the encounters. These incidents occurred under conditions that included the presence of corporate security staff, surveillance cameras, and defendant's management entourage. Yet no intervention occurred, supporting the inference that these acts were facilitated by and covered up by the broader enterprise and its affiliates. The complaint continues that Dixon did not willingly consent to participate in these acts. Instead, plaintiffs submitted solely out of fear of immediate retaliation, which defendant repeatedly demonstrated would include financial punishment, professional sabotage, abandonment in foreign countries, or physical harm. The suit claims that Fat Joe also issued veiled death threats and witness intimidation via direct messages such as, "You love your family, right? Fall back in 48 hours and we let you live." Though Fat Joe hobnobbed with some of the biggest names in politics, including then Vice President Kamala Harris, there was at least one brush with scandal back in 2010. He and members of his entourage were detained and questioned after a University of Wisconsin student reported an alleged sexual assault following a performance at the city's Orpheum Theater. At the time, Fat Joe's attorney called the woman a pretender groupie who was attempting to shake down the rapper for money. Well, that's what they always do. Anytime at all that a woman accuses a star of this type of thing, they are quick to call her a groupie. It's a money grab. It's whatever. So, like I said, when these cases come out for me, I take them seriously and I want to wait and see what bears out as we kind of vet the story, right? That doesn't mean I believe anybody instantly. That means I want to see. I want to see what other evidence we have. So let's see what some of the comments are. I wonder why no one is talking about surviving Ohio. That's what happens when criminals become rich and famous. More like slimed down Joe taking the weight loss stuff. Here we go. Let the circus begin. I don't believe not one of these bag grabbers, not one. Okay, so those are those comments. Well, like I said, I'm gonna follow this story. If it gets any legs, then we'll see. I think the most incriminating thing that I think is in this filing by Dixon, the three Jane Does that were supposedly underage, I felt like he gave like enough details where it could be verified if those things happen. I also think the tax fraud stuff he mentioned could also be something that could help this case get legs. So, like I said, we'll keep following the story, see what happens from here. And at this point, how these stories are coming with Diddy and now Fat Joe, it's like who's up next? Who is up next? Well, that's it. Thank you guys for stopping by. Please thumbs up the like, drop a comment, and if you are not a subscriber, please consider subscribing to the channel. I appreciate your support. And as always, until the next time, bye y'all.